You'll see I'm not alone in the studio today. That always makes me happy. Joining me is Jody Rigby. He's the president of First Responders of Mississippi, and we've got Miss Neely Lyons. She's the committee co-chair of a holiday networking luncheon and toy drive that's coming up, benefiting both First Responders of Mississippi and the Boys and Girls Club. So busy lady, busy time, but welcome.
Thank you. We're so glad to be here.
Okay, so this is over 10 years. This holiday networking luncheon and toy drive have been happening, Neely. So how did this get started? Take us back 10 years ago. When did this come together?
Well, I will admit that I was not at the original gathering. It goes back longer than 10 years ago, but at least 10 years ago. Just a group of local folks that work in mental health and addiction services in the central Mississippi area decided to get together for lunch. And at that time, they were basically just splitting the tab and talking about, how good the year had been and what they wanted to do for the next year. And as it grew over the years, it moved venues. The second venue was at the Colonial Country Club, if people remember that. And then eventually it outgrew that location as well, and now it's at Broadmoor Church in their banquet room, and it's gotten even bigger there. This year we're over 500
That's
attendees.
Crazy. Okay, Jody, have you been there for all 10 plus years?
Yes, ma'am.
For he started bringing out his fingers. He's like, yes, yeah. I do believe I have. Has it always benefited First Responders of Mississippi? Have y'all been around for that long or no?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So give us a little background of First Responders of Mississippi, because you alone are up to some really good things throughout the year.
Well, we try to assist agencies plus the law enforcement officers and firefighters and emergency medical personnel. In the greatest time of need, no matter what it is, we try to help.
Which I think is definitely a good thing, and it's a needed thing. And it's interesting that is connected with the Boys and Girls Club, both two wonderful, deserving organizations. Mm-hmm. So, Neely, how does the networking sort of narrow it down to who will be the beneficiaries of the toy drive?
Sure, and I will ask Jody to help me with this response as well. So, Jody has described First Responders of Mississippi, and they do work all throughout the year. They take requests for financial assistance or other personal assistance as an organization. But at Christmas time, you can imagine that first responders have even greater needs. And, Jody and I, before this broadcast, were talking about how during COVID, most first responders have a second job, and sometimes those jobs were not available to them. And so they were very hard hit during that time. And that's when the request from first responders to help specifically with the children of first responders meeting the needs at Christmas time. And Jody, you want to tell the story about the family that you helped, get supplies, and it was a very good story. You should tell it.
We had a first responder from the South that called and said he had COVID back during when COVID was running pretty strong. He says, I need just to get my son a jacket to go to college. He said, that's all I'm asking for is a coat for my son. And then he said, and maybe a holiday meal for my family before he goes back to college. So we got together and went down. We did our, financial assistance is a little different than just asking for toys and things like that from us. So we asked him to fill out the financial report. And Ruth and I got in the car, and I drove her down there. I'm the driver most of the time. Mm-hmm. And we met with the family. We took them to Walmart, in town, and we gave them a budget for food. Of course, they had their little calculator out. Most of these law enforcement and firefighters, and they have the little calculator. They're on a budget. They know what a budget is. Mm-hmm. And, they budgeted out, and, we got through, said, we're done. I said, well, you still have X amount of money left to go. He says, use that on the next person. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So those are kind of things that we do. We've had other people call and say, my sister passed away or my brother passed away, and I've gotten his kids. So now this month I have 4 more kids to add to my Christmas list. Mm-hmm. And those kind of people, we help those kind of people in this time of need.
And those are the people who are there first for us, whether it's in our worst time, car wrecks, fires, you name it. You're a first responder. That's why they're a first responder. They get up and then they run towards your worst day. And
it's kind of funny talking about first responders. It's what we do. I'm retired now, but it's what we do, and that's the way it is. It's. I worked at Hattiesburg Police Department, and they had a meeting one time back when Hercules was there. They said, "If you see us running out, don't come in."
Amen.
But that's
And
not,
I hope I never see you at work.
That's the way they. That's not the way they do. They're running in no matter what.
Right.
So we need to run to help them,
Okay.
and this is what we do. We've added first responders kids to our list after about 4 or 5 years ago, during when COVID came in, because we saw the need. We saw that, but first responders are hard to get to admit they're troubled. They got problems. So we helped over 250 kids last year. We don't tell people who they are or anything like that. Everything's confidential with us. We do a background check to make sure that they are a first responder before we
And that's fair.
you know.
And I would
Sure.
assume the first responders appreciate that.
And
Yeah.
so we don't want to go. Some people call. We've had calls from California this year
Wow.
from first responders that actually work for LAPD.
Is first responders of Mississippi unique to our state, or is it a subset of maybe first responders of other states?
We started this one, Ruth and I did, and got a great board. You can look us up at firstresponders.mississippi.com and see our board. We have a great board. We started ours here. It's the only one that I know of that's like this, except for Tennessee. The lady that works in the same field as behavioral health, she last year or year before last, she came down and saw what we were doing at this network luncheon and said, I want to do this same thing for Tennessee. So she has formed the Tennessee First Responders of Tennessee to help them.
Jody, do you have a dream and a vision of seeing maybe every state have a first responders? I mean, every state has them in need.
Yes,
He said that's a big guy.
I would love to see it start out. Yes, ma'am. I would love to see that. That would be great. Yeah. But there are some places first responders can turn to that it's not our first responders of Mississippi, but there are other organizations that help first responders only. You guys do. All the time. Y'all bring first responders on here and let them speak. Sometimes that's all they need to do is have a voice somewhere that helps them.
Well, and Jody, in that process of receiving needs, requests, you also have realized that there were requests that were not first responder related, and you needed somewhere to go with those. So that's really, I think, how you explained to me the relationship with Boys and Girls Club started, was to have an additional place to go to help kids.
When we get a request that's not a first responder, we send them to the Boys and Girls Club. We send the information to the Boys and Girls Club. It says this person needs assistance. They've been helpful not only for local kids. If we get one from South Haven, Mississippi, or we get one from Tupelo or the Gulf Coast, we send that to the Boys and Girls Club, and they send it to the appropriate people down there to let them know that there's somebody that needs assistance.
So it is a good partnership, and those are the kinds of things that are going on whenever you think about our local organizations or supporting local or just being tied into the community. It's all, we're all working. We all want to get people where they need to be so they can get the help that they can get. And then sometimes it's in a fun way by being able to come to a network luncheon and enjoy fellowship and food, I assume, by bringing toys. So this is a big deal. Then this is a much bigger sort of luncheon than just your sort of typical holiday gathering.
Sure. The attendees are asked to bring an unwrapped gift. They are not charged for the meal, so that's their contribution. Jody and I want to be sure that people know that even if you're not attending the luncheon, we will take donations starting around 8 o'clock in the morning. That's when the volunteer crew will start setting up, and we will be there till 2 in the afternoon. This is Monday. This coming Monday. And then there's a second location. Jody, remind everybody where the second location is for drop-offs.
Wilson Kia on Lakeland Drive. They have a box there for first responders in Mississippi that you can drop by there and drop a box off. Miss Lauren has been very, very kind to us. I think this is her 3rd or 4th year letting us have a place there at the Kia dealership.
Well, hang with us. We've got more with Jody and Neely coming up next. TV. We're continuing our conversation with Jody Rigby. He's the president of First Responders of Mississippi, along with Ms. Neely Lyons. She's the committee co-chair for this year's Holiday Network Luncheon and Toy Drive, benefiting the First Responders of Mississippi, plus the Boys and Girls Club. And you guys were just sharing what great things that both organizations do throughout the year. But this is your time as First Responders of Mississippi to focus on those families' children who may need a toy or two for the Christmas, or the family needs that for those individual families. But Neely, I know you started out talking about too, like mental health and sort of bringing this up. I know that's sort of intertwined in the celebration of recovery into this luncheon as well. I think y'all have it all in this in this luncheon. So what's the other piece to it if you're able to make it out or be a part of it?
Sure. Well, Jody and I, before this segment, were talking about that there is a lot of vicarious trauma that happens for first responders that come upon scenes of death and destruction. And they need a place to go to work on that trauma. And that's one of the things that First Responders of Mississippi can help with. They take requests from first responders when they have not just health, but mental health needs, and including addiction. They would be able to work with them to get evaluated, to get referred to treatment. Jody and I talked about how important it is for first responders to be able to find treatment that's not just designed for them, but that is located outside of the state, so that they can feel comfortable in the environment. So the people that are facilitating those referrals at First Responders of Mississippi have decades of experience in that regard and are very mindful that these are confidential conversations.
Because one of the stigmas with first responders and military, too, for coming forward with their struggles with mental health would be that they would be a ding on their career, because they are expected to be tough, bulletproof, and sort of all the things, but they're not. They're human. Correct. And they hurt too. And there's no just emptying all the trauma button for someone just because that's their profession of choice. So I can see where that would be a good thing added to their regimen, or to know that, for them to know that it would be as anonymous as possible through that process.
We're a very safe place for that, to come forward and say that. To say I need help. And that's one of the hardest things a police officer has ever done, or a firefighter. I need help, because they're climbing the ladders going up to save people, or they're sitting in the back of an ambulance giving drugs and medication, not drugs, medication.
Prescribed ones.
Yes. Or it's hard for them to ask for help.
Yeah.
It's because they're as you said, bulletproof. That's what their thoughts are. It's very hard to get on the radio and call and say, I need some help flagging traffic, because you can't handle it. That's what always comes. Can't you handle it? And that's what they're expected to do. So it gets hard for them to ask for help. Neely's in the behavioral health issues. My wife's in that stuff. That they're there to help.
So, Jody, someone who's listening who may be trying to raise their hand or wave a white flag, for those who were brave or had the courage to step out and ask, these are the positive stories that they'll hear, as those that if you do ask for help, there's help to be had, and there's a different life to uncover.
Yes, and if there is someone listening, or someone who's listening that knows of a person who needs help, then please go on the First Responders of Mississippi website and get the contact information and reach out to through that website and ask for help.
So who will be highlighted at the network or at the luncheon? I'm
glad you brought that up, because that's another thing that's grown over the years. I remember when there would be one or two recipients of acknowledgement or awards, and now there are about 20. And they are all in different categories. Some of the categories are, for example, champions in recovery. And this may be someone who's either worked in the mental health and addiction field, or who is a person in recovery themselves. I received this award 2 years ago. Is that right, Jody? Yeah. And so these names, this year's recipients are, if you want to go online, you can and look and see those names. But additionally, we have new categories that have been added. We have difference makers, and these are people in the community who've made an impact at large, and then there are awards being given to first responders themselves. There's the First Responders Community Champions, even a First Responder of the Year award. And this year it will be going to the Mississippi State Fire Academy.
That's pretty cool.
It is great.
Yeah.
And just want to be sure we acknowledge people for all their hard work.
And seen and not heard, because most first responders wake up every day not looking for awards. It's a calling to go into that field. Jody, I assume there's probably someone in your family try to stop you from doing it. And you were like, no, this is the route I'm probably going. That's usually how most say. And so same with teachers and so many other professions of service. And so it's good for them to just be recognized and seen and heard. Neely, you also were speaking of maybe a program or something that was online for people to be able to access. What's that? What is that about?
Right. About a year ago, I started working on a project called Family Recovery Collective, and the website is www.familyrecoverycollective.com. And this is an online-only educational and resource center for families and others facing addiction. And when you go online, it is a membership program, but it's $20 a month. I mean, most people spend that much money or more on coffee. The reason we're doing it is because we know that not everybody can get to a mental health professional, or even they may not even be ready to make that decision to ask for that type of help, but they want some information. And there's a lot of stuff out there on the internet, but this is a trusted resource. We're not affiliated with any particular treatment provider, so you can come and ask questions and get information like, what's the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist? Does my loved one really have a problem? There's some resource materials on the website for you to take a self-assessment. There are about 15 different videos that you can watch all around the topics related to mental health and addiction. And it really grounds people and makes them better consumers if they are going to ask for help and going to seek out either a therapist or a treatment center. Then they'll have a lot more information going into that decision and be able to make a better decision for their family.
Because I think one of the roadblocks for many is just all the unknowns.
Right.
And you don't know what you don't know. And so there is a level of confidence that comes in when you do know the difference between those words. And sometimes it's just you feeling a little insecure about your inadequacy of understanding that keeps you from doing it. And you should never do that because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So this seems like a good place to at least go and start collecting some of that, or just, you can snoop around without having to formally raise your hand just yet, which I think, if you're in that contemplation sort of phase, then
that's right.
move you into action just
exactly.
a little bit.
And we recognize that a lot of people are in that place where they're not ready to raise their hand, but they are looking for information. There is a free preview of the membership on the website. So if you says join a plan, you'll get to choose between a free preview and a paid for membership. And so we hope people will come and check us out.
Jody, with you and your wife's First Responders of Mississippi, and then just the work that she does, and then hearing Neely and all of that, it seems like there's just so many people in Mississippi in the trenches, boots on the ground, really there for those who may be struggling or, just going through a rough patch. Do you feel like people are gaining understanding that there's help out there? Do you feel like we're finally making enough noise for people to start raising their hands or start feeling more comfortable?
I believe we're getting there. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. A lot of times when I go places or I speak or Ruth speaks, I carry a sign with me. It's got First Responders of Mississippi on one side with our website, and on the other side it says, take out your phones right now. Her name is Ruth Ann Rigby, and here's her phone number, because you're going to need her before the end of the year. It may not be for you, it may not be for a family member, but it's going to be for a friend that's yours that's struggling in issues. Here's her phone number. She answers it 24/7, 7 days a week.
She's a quick responder.
She's a quick responder.
She's a quick text responder.
Yes, and so we're getting the word out there. It's slow, and we just got to twist and turn a little bit. Police officers, they go into situations where domestic quarrels, where they get there and one of the partners has had too much to drink, or they drinking too much or something like that. they see this every day. If they had a place that they could turn to tell those people, say, listen, your loved one has a problem. You need to find somebody before it gets worse. That's what we need to be doing. Firefighters, fire departments were their own worst enemy. Back used to, when I first started in law enforcement, you called a fire truck when the car was on fire to wash the street off or something like. Now firefighters answer every call.
Every call. And y'all have answered the call, too, to help those that are first responders of Mississippi, which is wonderful. And so thank you for your time, and looking forward to a great luncheon. And stick with us. We got more up next.